So, welcome to the conclusion of the data track today. I'm happy to welcome Vaibhavi and Martin for this talk. Vaibhavi is platform product owner for data and analytics at Allianz Direct. She's a data specialist with experience in data architecture, delivery of enterprise data platforms, data lake, and data governance. She and her team are currently on a mission to build a real-time data analytics platform at Allianz Direct. Martin is a senior consultant at Deloitte, specializing in data engineering and governance. He is dedicated to helping data unfold its potential throughout its lifecycle. As lead data engineer at Allianz Direct's data team, he's one of the architects of the next-gen data platform. The two will now present to us how Allianz Direct does data mesh. The stage is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you everyone who's here, and thanks for your time. So, why are we here today? What is data mesh? I'm sure most of you have at least heard the term so far. If not, we'll touch upon it shortly. I'll start with a short introduction. As we are in Germany, I'm guessing at least everyone here is familiar with the term Allianz. So just a bit of a background about Allianz Direct. So we call ourselves a tech company with an insurance license. So it's not like you'll not see a lot of suits and boots around, but what it means to be a tech company and what it means for us to have an insurance license. So traditionally speaking, even in any data world, usually you have a data warehouse, you have a data team sitting somewhere, and then the data is accessible for reporting, management reporting, so on and so forth. But why can't this data be accessible for our end users, our external users, including into that? One of the other motto of our company is simple equal to direct, as we like to call it. We try to make sure that our architecture, our platforms reflect into that, that as well. Just a bit of a background about how did we started. We came with a very strong foundation of Allianz Group, which was founded in 1890. The year 2019 actually gave birth to Allianz Direct. We started with 2 countries, Germany and Netherlands, and initially when we launched, we started with 2 product lines, the home insurance and the motor insurance. A year later, we were live in Italy, the year later in Spain, and just also last year we launched our newest product, travel insurance. And for us, this is just the beginning. We have many other things that we were looking forward to. We have the things on our horizon to look forward to. When we started in 2019, like most of the other companies, we started with a very nice data warehouse, which was catering to all of our data needs. But the kind of growth that we saw in the 4 years did not just lead to the exponential growth in data volumes, but also the demand and the number of users, internal, external users, the number of data exchange pipelines that we need to set up with brokers, aggregators. Direct insurance means our portal has to be live and has to have a quickest response time, because when a customer logs in, you do not want them seeing a screen which is buffering for even 30 seconds, means too long. Also, in case of when we receive claims, if somebody is calling us, we need to understand, and being able to cater to our customer right away is very crucial. Like any other typical warehouse, usually works in a batch fashion. You know, you have your core system somewhere sending you data once a day at the end of the business hour. If batch fails in the night, then you need to have support going on also at the night. It works very fine when you have a smaller setup, or it worked well traditionally, but we are in a new world of data, and we exactly faced similar problems. Yeah, how can we scale much more quickly if we are launching new product lines? How can we scale much more quickly when we are going to more and more countries? The central BI teams are actually the enablers of data, which should be able to provide a lot more KPIs, dimensions, facts, measures, attributes, whatever you want to call it. But slowly, when you have this kind of data growth and this kind of demand, the teams slowly start to become bottlenecks, because you will have one central BI team sitting somewhere, and you will have 10 of your product teams demanding data at the same time. How do you prioritize? Yeah, what is the biggest priority? Should we manage sales KPIs? Should we manage claims KPIs, or something else altogether? And don't forget finance, of course. Those are your financial numbers at the end of the day. So if we somehow scale the teams, manage the bottlenecks, okay, then the next question comes as ownership. Each team can look at the same KPI differently. How do you categorize your sales figures? Yeah, when from finance perspective, only when we receive the money in our accounts is it a sale, or as soon as we have a contract in the system, it's a sale. And what do you exactly report? What is your source of truth? And these are the similar challenges we were also facing. The data warehouse was built 4 years ago when we started. A lot of definitions were brought in, a lot of discussions happened, everything went into a central catalog. But of course, people change, organizations evolve, and then what happens is this: who's owning the definition? The definition ownership, the KPI ownership at the end then lies with data team, this central BI team that we are talking about. Then we get questions, hey, I changed something in my source system, what is reflected in my target system? What is reflected in my analytical platform now? And how do you manage this? Again, there is one central team who's actually data engineers, BI engineers, modelers, reporting specialists who are maintaining it. But what knowledge do they have about business processes? Do they know as much as a claim handler or a pricing analyst would know? Certainly not. And then you look at the definition in your technical catalogs, and then you try to translate it to a business definition. And then there is always a gap there. So you're like, okay, we are losing track, we are losing ownership. We need our business to be involved more, not just about the business or operational processes, but also around analytical processes. Why the people, the business teams who are so close to the operational data set are not so close to the analytical data set? Somebody built a Power BI report, published it 2 years ago, and then how many people are actually looking at it? Are we really data driven? So these were the things where we wanted to move ahead with. The one other point that I would like to mention is area around self-service. Why central BI teams usually turn out to be bottleneck? Because when you have a central team governing your entire infrastructure, more or less the control stays with that team, which is very good from data security perspective and for your compliance, governance, auditing requirement perspective. But sometimes what also happens is that means for your end user, there is no freedom. Any new initiative, any new launch, there is somebody sitting from business side will write down a nice little Jira ticket for you. Hey, I need this. And what does it mean by I need this? I need this data. But where is this data coming from? How the source is producing this data? What is the impact? What is the auditability? This is centrally governed. But I have a lot of third-party data. Let's say nowadays it's available all over the places, geolocations, vehicle information, home information. And it's simple data set we just want to ingest and make it available. How can we enable our business team to do it more in self-service fashion than writing Jira tickets, waiting 2 sprints for refinement, another 2 sprints for delivery? The turnaround time goes very, very long in this case. And we said, okay, we see this is happening. What can we do about it? With this kind of data growth, user growth, and batching of data and having T-1, D-1, whatever you want to call it, data availability, we soon realize it's not enough. Having only a data warehouse is not enough. We need to scale fast. We need to move fast. And if you're not moving fast, it's basically, yeah, you're not in the race anymore. The other aspect was around governance and the flexibility of the systems that what it can offer. And we have a strong foundation of data. We already have a lot of data. We already have a lot of KPIs. So what else can we do to enable our business to move much more faster and much more forward? This is actually when we started looking at data mesh, and we said, okay, it sounds like a nice new architecture that is coming out. Let's read more about it. So about a year ago, we started building our new data platform, what we call as Next Gen. And in this platform, we said, okay, we don't have to go big bang. We already have a data warehouse which functions, works fine. What else now can we enable our business to do on this new platform? I'll shortly hand over to Martin to talk more about our architecture, what this platform means, what did we do. The one point was this for us, why data mesh triggered our interest was it talked about exactly the same problems that what we were facing, having a monolith, having a data warehouse, not being able to scale faster and not having self-service. So we said, okay, let's take one problem at a time. Let's see if data mesh can solve it for us. And if it did, we'll move on to the next and to the next. So I think for us, it's still a very nice and exciting journey ahead when we move towards it, but at least we have made a start. And Martin, I will hand over to you to talk more about it.
Yeah, thanks, Vaibhavi. Just go back quickly. Yeah, why are we doing data mesh? Good question. Maybe let's first grasp on the definition. I don't know if everyone is aware of them. So quick recap, very short one. So the idea behind data mesh is to overcome the issue that you run into with the central data governance team that you have that you run into when you have a central data lake managing team at the end of the day. Yeah, so you have a central body who's governing everything, who's owning the data on the data lake. So the actual idea of data mesh is very simple. It relies on the four aspects. The first is domain distributed ownership. Yeah. What does it mean? It means that the ownership of the data that is produced by a business function or by a business use case on the operational data plane stays with that same business unit throughout the data lifecycle. So the business unit would be responsible for also ingesting that data into the data platform, and would be responsible for ensuring that security constraints are adhered to, would be responsible for documentation, and of course would be responsible for making this data actionable for other business units as well, besides on doing their own reports on it. Second one is data as a product. That means data shouldn't just be dumped on the data platform and be left there for someone else to discover. The idea is to treat data as a central thing that you do in order to derive new innovative ideas and to derive new business models, essentially. Yeah, and you can only do that by enabling everyone of the company to actually do stuff with the data. So the idea is to present it as a product. So to make sure that it's accessible, it's discoverable, and that it's documented in exactly the right way, so that someone else who is not an expert of your domain is able to find the right documentation at the right time and at the right level of detail. The third aspect of it is actually answering the question that you might have, how is this going to be possible for the business domain? Because that's what the data engineering department was doing before. The solution to this is to establish like a platform as a service. So the data platform can actually be used by the business domain as a service to essentially do all the things that they have to do now that they have ownership responsibilities of their data. Fourth aspect is a federated thought of data governance, meaning, of course, you need data governance in all of this, but the idea is not to have like a single body of centrally defined data governance, a central body who's deciding on what documentation should look like and all this kind of stuff, but instead having all the data POs come together and deciding on a unified way of doing things. And the result of that would then again be policies that the platform team should be enforcing as code, and not by assigning data stewards who are talking to people individually to brush up on their game. Okay. So after this brief excursion, let's go to the next slide. So how did we adopt all of this, what I just talked about? Yeah, three aspects came to, I think, are important in here. It's organization, processes, and of course, technology. Organization. In order to enable the business teams to assume all of these responsibilities that they have as new holistic data owners, are well, the question that they usually have is, okay, how on earth are we going to do this? The answer is introducing cross-functional teams. So essentially you have your existing business teams, which are augmented with data engineers that were before residing associated to the central data engineering team, which they still are. They're just lent to the business teams. Yeah, and they're the first point of contact for the business teams for questions in terms of how on earth am I going to bring the data on a platform and make it actionable. Yeah. The second thing, the processes. The way of the business teams can only assume this ownership responsibilities that they have if proper processes are defined, how they're going to execute this ownership. Like how are they going to put the data onto the data platform? How are they going to do the ingest? How are they configuring the security settings? And of course, then once the data is on the platform, how do they actually make use of it? Yeah, how do they build data models out of it? How do they enable other domain teams to action on the data that they created, such that you don't end up with a pretty data platform, but where all the data is like confined in silos because it's not possible to be accessed from other domains. Yeah. And the third one, technology. That is, of course, the question of how to make this all possible, how to build processes which are easy enough for business owners to follow, and to follow in a way that they like to use the product, and that they're efficient of following these processes, and efficient enough for other people to use their data as well. So essentially you have to, the central thing that you should always ask yourself is, how do I make my technologically not trivial processes so simple that the business domain can actually action on them? So the key here is to abstract everything away that is not immediately, that does not require immediate information by the business domain, of course. Yeah. Yeah. How do I go to the next slide? Okay, in the next slide we have a very simple, like a very high-level view of our architecture. And it looks like this. So on the left we have our data sources, which is like our operational data plane. So this is where all the business logic happens, where we have the microservices that essentially are controlled by the business domains to implement their new functionalities. Then on the right we have our data platform, our analytical data plane. The central thing that we have here on the left, on the operational data plane, so our microservice, some internal databases. In the middle sits a Kafka message broker that is servicing, of course, as a messaging backbone that we have. And we have a schema registry attached to Kafka that is ensuring that certain schema constraints are met. And then how do we get the data across to the right side? The answer, of course, are big fat green arrows that signify, like in this case, it's we have this ADLS Gen 2 connector, this this connector that pulls data out of Kafka and puts it into ADLS Gen 2. And this connector is created by the business domains by just filling out a piece of config and by running a Tekton job, essentially. Then once the data is in the landing zone, we have the same. We can the business can, by updating a configuration file, spawn a Spark job who is adding necessary metadata, transforming it into delta tables, and making it accessible to the business on the refined layer. This configuration would also in this configuration it's also possible to define security constraints to confine columns which need to be masked to the general purpose user, and which are not masked, or which are visible by users with special access rights. And the refined zone, of course, it's also the layer where the business can action on the data and refine it further, do aggregations, and define the domain-specific data models. Yeah. But I think the most important thing of this area is that from the Power BI client on the which is our data visualization tool, of course, the business can also already pull in the data on the refined zone and make it visible in Power BI reports. So essentially, what we have for new data sets to travel from all the way on the left to all the way on the right, which used to be like 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how clean the requirements were, are now down to about half an hour, and it's a subject of configuration by everyone. Subject of configuration by the business domains. There's zero things that need to be done by the central data engineering team. Yeah. So on the refined zone, the business user can use Spark SQL or Spark notebooks to action on the data and build the data models. Authentication is done via syncing of the central Active Directory and putting it into user management, the user management that is offered by the Databricks service on Azure. And of course, on the bottom there is our federated data governance, who is essentially deciding how the questions around access are managed. Right. So this kind of what I just said answers how to ingest the data, how to onboard the data, and now the next slide is about how can the business actually build reliable data products. So reliable data assets that have necessary configuration, necessary stability, that other domains can use it for the mission-critical reports. So what we have on this refined zone is essentially a set of development environments for all of our domains. Yeah. So of course there's like the domain data modelers can access the physical data via a user access layer who's taking care of the authentication, authorization, and then whenever new data product is built, they can refer to the data products that are published already by other domains or by themselves, and then once they're ready to publish a certain piece of data or a certain table process, there's a certification that verifies that all of the necessary attributes are actually set. So that there is defined ownership, functional documentation, security, and technical documentation, all of these things. And once we're done, we have this data product number 5, who's like now promoted to a real data product, which can be accessed by all of the other domains. And of course, the idea here is to have what we have on top here, to have this to prevent the siloing of domains in the data space. So the idea is to have the documentation in a way that all of domains can access all of each other's data products. So next one, a brief definition of our data product definition. So the data product essentially consists of everything that needs to be everything that needs to be created. So essentially like a streaming job or a new table can be created. So this is like configuration logic, jars, and all this kind of stuff. Some semantic documentation, some metadata. And by virtue of this data certification product process that we saw on the previous slide, all of the other technical aspects are actually taken care by the platform. So once again, this is like the general gist of the platform, that everything, all the functional information necessary is provided by the domain teams, or the technical information is abstracted away and taken care of by the platform team. Okay. With that, I will hand over to Vaibhavi again.
Yep, thanks. So Martin actually touched upon quite interesting points here, yeah? So going back to the architectural slide, what is the difference here that you see from a traditional data warehousing space? All those green arrows, those are just green arrows on a picture, but actually they denote everything which can be done now in a self-service fashion. So most of our product teams, domain teams, whatever you want to call them, are anyways producer of this data. They know this data best. They know whether it contains a PI information or not. And previously, when you are in the data warehousing world, this means a Jira ticket to the central team and waiting for them to deploy and to make this data available in somewhere in one of your databases, your schemas, warehousing, data lake, whatever. Now, all of this can be done in a self-service fashion by this team. That means we took out already one bottleneck. Yeah, you produce your Kafka topic, you come to a central repository, which is governed, of course, by still there is a platform team which is taking care of it, but at least it is much more accessible, much more open, and people do not have to wait for central data team to just deploy a data. To deploy a Kafka topic or to make that data accessible. It can already cater to a lot of use cases which was not possible in a previous traditional world. A second aspect here is, as also we are an insurance domain, the data, the auditability is very crucial. We cannot mess with data, let's just say in this way, yeah? So why certification process? This is basically also to ensure that once, when we talk about taking away this central team approaches and going more domain distributed fashion, the quality of the data, the reliability of data becomes a question. So if I'm publishing something, I need to also have the visibility of who else is using it or consuming it, because if I have full control over my data, I can also choose to deploy and then change something which can impact somebody else. And this is something why we wanted to avoid, having these silos or these small data islands all across the organization. At the end, they're not able to talk to each other. So for this, the certification process or the underlying governance, or from the platform team perspective, what you see here, two separate spans, domains and platform. The central platform team still takes care of, is my data secure? Do I have correct masking on all my PII fields? Is every domain team that is publishing a data product, is it ready to be published? Is it mature enough to be published? And what does it mean when you publish your product? That's why these two boxes, you have a domain sandbox, and only when the ownership is clear, that the things are entered into a catalog, you have the right security in place, that's when your product is qualified to be published. We do not restrict data access for our users. So once a data product is published, and if you're a part of Allianz Direct group, and you can have access to this data, you can already read this data. We do ensure that certain security aspects are taken care of, your GDPR compliance, so on and so forth. But access-wise, once it is published, we expect it's a mature enough product that can be then used by anybody else in the company. And that's why the role of the platform team, this self-service infrastructure as a platform, what we call it as, becomes very crucial. Some of our challenges that what we faced during this, to have this change in the mindset about, okay, we are a central team, we are going to govern everything around data, to going more distributed, to actually look at data end to end, to understand data lineage. It's not that I'm producing this data, that means I can change the way I want it to, because you can impact somebody else very easily with a small change or a small bug that you can cause. The ownership moving from central team structures towards the distributed team structure. This is one area I think we still will be working on a lot, because it's not a change like, it's not like a switch on and switch off, yeah, we did it. No, it's a journey, and all of us as a company, as a team, have to move together in this direction. We are very lucky with our Kafka because we already had a very nice Kafka infrastructure. So we could take use of schema registry and ensure that, the data quality is coming right. We are not deriving schemas, we are not deriving metadata. We could rely on the schema registry, and producers of data are responsible for this. This helped us to keep the data quality clean, or let's say keep the issues of the source at the source, or fix them as early as possible than just, getting all these issues onto your data platform and then trying to fix it there. Because, then you're going to get into a complex issues where, oh, this is not right, this is not translating well, or these numbers don't add up. And then just taking a look back, I think we still have a very long way to go into our data mesh journey. We are just starting, and we have many more new ideas that we want to implement. But I think one thing that helped us is not thinking about a very big bang approach. Yeah, tomorrow we are going to get up and switch off this and switch on this. No. So what we said, we are going to start small. We are going to break it down into three, four big areas that we have. So first areas we wanted to tackle was self-service, how to remove this huge dependency that gets piled up onto one team. So we said, okay, we have Kafka, let's make it self-service. We at least can bring in data into a refined fashion into a central repository for data. Then of course we want to build models on top of it. We'll have data science use cases where custom logic would still go into it, and that's when we'll have these cross-functional teams of domain and data which could enable to do this. But at least you have data accessible, discoverable, and we could at least bring in some more transparency, which could usually gets lost into a warehouse. Because people will know what is happening in the operational side of it, but when you come to an analytical plane, when you start building all these dimensions and facts and snapshots, there are very few business users who would understand what does it mean, when do we collect a snapshot technically, business-wise. So to bring in that transparency, to make this data much more open, transparent, accessible was the other problem that we were looking at. So we said, okay, we need to have a strong foundation. We need to have a platform which can be scaled and which can be accessible. So we also looked at a bunch of data cataloging solution. That's something we will continue, I think. So how can we ensure that one team deploys a data product and the other team knows when it got deployed and what they can use for what sort of use cases? And I would like to just conclude with one statement. Yeah, for us, it's not always about technology, because we have so many options on the market right now that you can do the same thing with multiple other options. We chose one, we went ahead with it. We will see how it turns out. But it was more about mindset of how can we really, data-driven word is used so much these days that everything is data-driven. But what does it mean to be data-driven? Yeah, do our product teams have a view on their data? We launch new products, we launch new features, we are moving fast. But what does it mean? Are we inspecting our data in the right fashion? What I did 6 months ago, how is it performing? How is my platform performing? How is my business performing? Are teams looking at it easy to create a data platform, deploy a bunch of Power BI reports, but if users don't use it, if users don't look at those reports, it's as good as they have no value. So how can we bring in this change? I'm not saying we have all the answers already, but let's say we have made some progress, and hopefully in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, I don't know, we'll have much more to show here. But I think with that, we will conclude our talk for today, and I think now we can open for Q&A.
Yes, so thank you very much for this presentation and the insight into what's going on at Allianz Direct. So are there any questions in the audience? I see that I squeeze myself through this.
I don't have a mic now.
Thanks for the great talk. It seems really impressive what you managed to come up with. This self-service thought of enabling teams really resonates. I'm wondering, what if things don't work perfectly? I mean, for example, you talked about Apache Spark jobs that are configured. So if I remember correctly, Spark can be a bit finicky as far as memory configurations are concerned or data skew is concerned. And then these business teams who own these pipelines might not yet be experts on data engineering and how to fix this. So do you see a gap there? Is this an actual issue? Does the platform team help in this case?
Yes. So that's why we still have a platform team who's taking care of all the infrastructural aspect, like is my cluster scaling up, scaling down as it is necessary, and how much you're actually also spending on this infrastructure, right? Because this needs to scale down at some point. So for this, we have platform team which takes care of these aspects. Like if something is not working as expected, as something has failed overnight, we have certain alerts which the system can send out, and those are then also monitored centrally from the platform perspective. And we will also be enabling then the domain engineers, the data engineers that we actually integrate in the domain, then to start looking at it. The key for us was to keep at least a process central so that any engineer that is onboarded at a point can go to one single place and they can find all errors there, or failures, monitors, whatever.
Thanks for your talk, very interesting. I've got a question regarding your approach in probably like the basic way you approach this huge problem you are facing, you're solving. So from what I see, I can see it, your challenge on one side, you have one dimension, which is the complexity coming from the several domains that for which your data is coming from. I see another dimension, which is the, let's say, the semantic specialities, having data coming from several countries. You're speaking about Netherlands, Switzerland, Italy, and Spain, and so on. And another complexity dimension, which I can see now, would be at the right part of the funnel, would be then the Power BI user. So there must be a way in which you harmonize all your data in order then let's say the queries coming from Power BI make sense at scale with those dimensions. How did you solve it? How are you solving it?
You want to take it up, or should I? Yeah. You absolutely got it right. So there are a couple of things that helped us. First thing is, even though we are live in 4 countries, we use a core insurance system which has the source system, as we call it, the operational side of it, has the data in more or less the same format for all countries. So that helps us to model easily on this side. Second thing, when we talked about Kafka Broker, we introduced, let's say what we call as the metadata block. So we said anybody who's producing any Kafka topic needs to have this metadata block. And what we ensured with this metadata block is how can we implement row-level security. So every Kafka topic that is produced should have, it should say it's producing data for which country, and if it's producing data for more than one country, each message that is produced should have a certain column in it, which we can then use in the analytical side of it to, let's say, implement row-level security. Every Kafka message should have a timestamp. It should have a unique ID which is generated. And only when, as a producer, when you're deploying your Kafka topic, if you deploy it without a metadata block, first of all, you will not be able to deploy it. But let's say even if it happened, on the analytical side of things, that's where the process comes into the picture, that you can still connect to your landing area, because that just ADL is Gen2 connectors deploying JSON or Avro files. But when you go to the refined area, if the metadata columns are not found, the process will fail. So we'll not load the data and then have it exposed. Rather, we will fail early at that point in time if we don't see it. And pushing the responsibility when it comes to also sensitive data, GDPR request, we push it again to the source. There is a bit of a process here also, like every topic that is produced, we ask, because the producers know what data it contains, and we have certain configuration files that you deploy when you want to connect it to your analytical side of thing, where you can specify the list of columns which could potentially contain sensitive information and the masking rules against it. And we use Azure AD heavily for this. So there are multiple kind of roles. So there are country-specific reader roles, and there are central reader roles, and then there are special roles where people who should have access to PII data can access. So it's not masked permanently, but it's a dynamic data masking. So let's say if I'm somebody from call center team, I need to see customer names, addresses, then I will have a specific role assigned against my name. So when I log in, it's filtered out based on the current user. But let's say if somebody who's from, I don't know, a data engineer who does not really need to see customer information will not be assigned this role into into Azure Active Directory, and then that's how it would work. Yeah.
Any other questions? Also from the remote? Yeah.
Thanks for the talk, first of all. I was wondering how you organize the ingestion of the data that, as you shown, can be configured like by the domain users. So how does the governance work here? How do you assign source systems, source objects, Kafka topics, whatever it is, to like the correct domain? Or do you not care if the same data is ingested multiple times into multiple domains?
Yes and no. So, so we use GitHub heavily, and so every time a source team is deploying a pipeline, if I go back to this slide, even into this analytical plane, the landing refine model, all the 3 layers are categorized by domain, and you can look at them as schemas or databases in our Hive Metastore. But when a topic is deployed, it is connected. So when we deploy on Kafka, there is a domain ownership against it. So there is a GitHub repository assigned to each domain, and those engineers will then say, okay, this is my topic, this is my ownership, so I put it here in this. We do not have a picture-perfect solution yet. It's technically possible that users can do it, but we try to then do some sort of monitoring on it.
Actually, the domain ownership is in that special metadata block, which is contained in every Kafka message. And then if you deploy, if you onboard this Kafka message into this Kafka topic on the landing zone, it flies into the correct area.
More questions?
That's
Yeah, I have one question from remote. Bernd Schönwalder is asking, how do you manage the ability to relate local data semantics across the enterprise? Each business team might be interested in its local domain first, but high or highest value for the whole enterprise might lie in cross-domain data interpretation capabilities. Who owns that aspect?
Interesting question. So our organizational setup helps us with this. So for most of our business teams, we have central teams and local teams. So what do these central teams are responsible for is harmonization across countries, because now we are at 4 countries, but imagine if we have 20 countries. Yeah, each country can have local customizations, flavors of it. We try to harmonize as much as we could, and this is where the central business teams helps us do that. In case of custom requirements, custom local requirements, let's say, we still onboard that data. And for this, we use the row-level security, or what we call it as each country has an ID. So if there are specific requirements, to give an example of cars, right? When we do a car insurance, Netherlands, in Netherlands we have a governmental body entity which stores all the cars by license plate, and any insurance company can have access to this data. That means when a customer comes to us to request a quote, you can just enter a license plate number and you can see all the history of the car, the model, the make, the consumption, etc. I think in Germany, it's the HSN, TSN that is used for this. Or when we talk about Spain, we have to pay taxes on the insurances to the government, and there are local customizations that we need to handle, and some of them are even legal requirements for us as an insurance company to manage. So we have to enable this, and for this the local team take care of local customization, and the central team still focuses on what can we harmonize and have it standardized, because when we talk about our internal reporting, we still have the numbers to be matching all across the countries.
More questions? Anything else, or everyone happy?
Okay.
Then
cool.
I would have one more question, not a technical one, but so this is quite a change in how things are handled. Are the teams happy about it? Are they embracing it, or is there still some convincing and to do?
Yeah, it's a journey, yeah. So I'm not gonna lie. So it's not the idea that everybody likes at first, because it's difficult even for us. Like I always give an example when, like, think about a time when people shifted from waterfall to agile. There is always some resistance, and there is always some support. So it's always, there are teams who are very happy about the idea, or it depends on the maturity, the expertise of the team. There are teams who are much more using this data. So if I have to give an example, the data science squads, they're very happy when it comes to this, because then they have access to all the possible data. But then there are also the people who are not so much looking at data as they should be. So in that case, then this is where our domain engineers help them. Like, okay, I'm with you, I'm with your team for next 6 months. Okay, what do you need? What can we do about it? So it's a balance that we have to find.
Yeah. Helping them along to get up to speed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, our management greatly helped us in this, because when we came up with this idea, we had a huge support from all of the management team. So that helps us to also drive it centrally, saying like, hey guys, we're doing this. Now the question is, how can we do it better?
All right. Any last minute questions? No. Then I would conclude this. Thank you very much again for the presentation. Thank you all for joining. And I would like to invite you for dinner and interesting discussions.